Technically, this is a 5-minute call to the opposition. In their absence, I'll accept a 10-minute call because I think you're next on the schedule after that. Paul Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to take a call on this bill, and it's been a very interesting debate we've had in the House. Mr. Cunliffe gave what sounded like a leadership qualification speech. He reminded me of Huey Long, the great American politician of the 1930s, whose motto was to suck up the fat and spread it thin. And that seems to be his new approach to politics, which was all about demagoguery and getting out there and trying to buy votes all around the country. Members by now will be very familiar with the National Party's plan to build a brighter future for all New Zealanders, which underpin the budget. The priorities are 1, responsibly managing the government's finances, 2, building a more competitive and productive economy, 3, delivering better public services, and 4, rebuilding Christchurch. And we know these themes so well because there has been a measure of consistency in what this government has done, and that is never more valuable than today in these difficult international times. Mr. Speaker, the headline measure of our financial management in this budget has been the fact that we're on track to post an operating surplus in 2014 and 2015. And it's not the world's largest surplus, we concede, but it is a very important milestone for this country. And it'll be for the first time in a number of years that the government will be raising enough revenue in order to pay its way without having to increase debt. And we will have the opportunity then to start repaying some of the debt that we've accumulated during this recession, as we should be during good times when the economy is growing. And that represents a huge turnaround given the impact of the 2008 recession. And it has not been a miserly or mean budget, as some have alleged. There's nothing generous, Mr. Speaker, about spending other people's money. There's nothing generous about spending money that you don't have, and you don't have. And so that is what many of the promises that have been made from the other side. The focus has been on returning to surplus, and at bottom that's been about strengthening New Zealand's resilience in uncertain times. It's about maintaining New Zealand's international credibility, a status that is hard won but easily lost, Mr. Speaker. It's about helping to keep interest rates low, which has been underpinning the strength, the ability of many households around New Zealand to pay back mortgages and increase their savings. And it's worth noting that while most sides of this House nod and say, yes, we have to get back to surplus, they have opposed every single restraint that we have brought to this House in order to get this economy back to surplus. So it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it, Mr. Speaker. And we're very conscious at the moment that New Zealand's high level of private sector debt is an issue for the country, and there has been some natural correction going on as households have been saving in a positive manner for the first time since 2000, and household debt has indeed fallen. But as I indicated at the start, Mr. Speaker, returning the government's book to surplus and increasing household savings is only part of the solution. Another important aspect, our prosperity depends on building a more productive and competitive economy based on savings and less debt. And the Labour Party, I accept and agree, say they agree with National on that basic message that we do need to grow our economy. At least that's what David Parker has been saying in recent speeches. I'm not sure about the rest. I'm certainly not sure about the Greens. I don't think they do want to see growth. But most people are concerned about retaining our people in New Zealand and not losing so many New Zealanders to Australia. And that, at the end of the day, comes down to growth and about generating jobs, generating products that the rest of the world wants to buy. And so let's just run through some of the things that the government has been doing that this budget has referred to. It's about the tax changes that we've made initially in 2009 and 10, realigning the tax system away from taxing income and onto taxing spending. The Labour and the Greens both oppose that. It's about boosting capital markets through the mixed ownership model bill. That's been opposed. We've been investing much more in innovation and science. Labour probably says they've supported, but when it came to the point, they didn't. they didn't do much when they were in power. They didn't do much. I'll come to that in due course. They didn't do much when they were in power for 10 years. When we talked about getting people off benefits and back into work, that's been opposed. When we talked about the focus on primary resources and encouraging the use of our resources around the country, our mining resources, and investing in infrastructure, that's been opposed and certainly has been opposed during the EEZ bid. And when we talk about investment in trade policy and encouraging new free trade agreements, that's been opposed. Labor used to support free trade, but they don't seem to anymore. And when we talk about the 90-day probation period, that was also opposed. So they talk about wanting to grow the economy, but when it comes to the crunch, they oppose it. And now, in recent times, we've seen, under the guidance of Bill English and Stephen Joyce, two eminently capable ministers, we have seen the government taking further steps in crystallising its thinking around the business growth agenda. And we have two wonderful reports that have been produced recently. And I think we do need, the House does need to resist the siren calls of the Labour Party, who have gone back to the same old song of the 1960s and 70s, where we've seen some ideas floated from Mr Parker in recent times about forcing the government departments to buy locally made goods, even if somebody else can produce them more efficiently and cheaply overseas. I don't see how that's had a good track record for many years. We've heard him talking vaguely about controlling the concurrency. I'd love to know how Mr Parker is going to do that. It's a very difficult area. Is he proposing that we should start watering the milk like other countries, or printing money? Is he proposing that we should wind back the clock to the 1930s in exchange rate controls? I'm very much looking forward to seeing what Mr Parker is going to do to control that problem. Or is it a return to the R&D tax credits that they tried? Well, the Labour Party doesn't seem to have learnt anything from history. Taxes should be low rate and broad base. Parker's path of R&D tax credit that were tried as a path back to the shambles of the 1980s when New Zealand was... We had them for decades. They had them for decades in the 70s and the 80s, and it didn't work then and it won't work now. Meantime, while he's wanting to take some money off exporters, he's wanting to increase taxes on exporters at the same time, which is because export companies all have capital gains, and he wants to increase them at the same time with a new tax and the capital gains tax, and also take R&D taxes off them. It doesn't make any sense to me. It seems very short-sighted, and it also implies, Mr Speaker, that local businesses are somehow less worthy, as if local power or telecoms or infrastructure businesses, for example, which are every bit as important to New Zealand's economy and its growth and its international competitiveness, why should they not have tax credits along the lines that Mr Parker suggests? So the idea of R&D tax credits is an idea that never worked in the past and won't be working again. So the best thing for New Zealand businesses, you had them for 20 years in the 1970s and 80s, and they didn't work very effectively. So these ideas look superficially attractive, but history's shown that over the long term, such breaks really succeed in boosting homegrown businesses. The best thing for a New Zealand business is to compete openly in the world on their own merits. And there's no magic to this other than producing goods and services that the rest of the world want to buy for the best price. And that's what this government is keen on supporting. And so we've taken a lot of thought into what things businesses need in New Zealand, and the 6 areas that come to mind are the ones that they're universal, they're not unique to New Zealand, but that businesses need access to ideas and innovation to create an opportunity. They need money to build businesses. They need access to the necessary raw materials. They need skilled people to work in businesses. They need customers who want to buy their products, and access to export markets is implied in that. And they need infrastructure that the business depends on, such as electricity, broadband and transport. And this government has gone through that in a systematic fashion, looking at what those basic requirements are for successful businesses, and asking that question and producing very detailed and logical plans to how government can ensure that businesses have access to those essential 6 areas. And that's what these business growth agenda reports, progress reports, are all about. And we've seen the first 2 come out in recent days: export markets and innovation. And these documents here filled me with great hope for the future of New Zealand. given the guidance that we have from this government. And so, all in all, Mr Speaker, it gives me pleasure to speak in favour of the government's budget this time round as relayed through this legislation. Thank you very much.
Honourable John Banks.
Let's restate for the record